we go. See what the fun happens.
Yeah, the recording should have just kicked in. Well, look, yeah, thanks for joining me. And I know that it's at an odd time for you all the way in the UK and for me all the way in Sydney, but it's certainly good to be connected.
Yeah, great. Yeah, likewise. Good stuff.
Yeah. So look, what I'm really looking forward to today is essentially just having a chat with you. The whole focus on Second Wind, this new platform is really about helping athletes and pro sports people to transition to that career beyond sport once they hang up the boots or really stop being the centre of the game. And you've got a great story, and indeed one where I have partially watched you, having spent a few years in Hong Kong, enjoying the sevens.
Right. I hope I didn't put you to sleep too often, but there we go.
It's actually all good, all good. So look, really just to kick things off, it would be fantastic just to get a better understanding of you and your sporting beginnings and stepping into that career for you.
Yeah, I mean, so it all started, I mean, as a young, well, maybe not as most people, but mine was as a young lad, like a 4 or 5 year old kid. I mean, boisterous, beating up my brother. I think my parents just wanted to get rid of me and thought, like, he's got 2 left feet, so can't play football, so let's go and chuck him on a rugby field and hopefully someone will bop him on the nose and he'll calm down a bit. Yeah. So that was sort of where it all began, in my little mini rugby club back in Hove on sort of Brighton seafront. And then I mean, I just loved it. I loved every sort of component of it. And I'll be honest, I didn't really ever I mean, I dreamt of playing for England and all that sort of stuff, as I think young kids probably do, but I never really thought, oh wow, this is going to be a job. And equally, when I was growing up, it wasn't a job. Like, rugby wasn't it was still sort of amateur for most of it. It was only really when I sort of started just finishing at school and in the late 90s and then the early noughties, where it become professional and it had become a viable option for you to actually earn a living doing it. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe, this could happen. And at 17, 18, I'd been, playing in schoolboys and all that sort of stuff. And then Harlequins came knocking on my door and said, look, would you be interested in wearing the jester's outfit for a bit? And I mean, that's where it all started, really. That was where I guess the real appetite and interest for me came from then, as a 17-year-old lad, thinking, wow, I'm right on the fringes here of being able to get paid and do this as a job. And so it just sort of kicked on.
Yeah. And so had they not come knocking, what do you think you'd have been doing?
I mean, it was interesting because I actually totally ballsed up my my A levels, and as a result of probably rugby and finding girls at school and things like that, so there was a few distractions that meant I didn't quite hit the grades that I was meant to hit. I was forecast to get AAB in my A levels and ended up walking away with BBD. So my parents were not over the moon on results day or what have you, but so it nearly did derail then, because I sort of had a bit of a panic moment. The plan was to go to London School of Economics from a uni and sign for Harlequins, and when I didn't get the grades, I didn't get into LSE, and then it was like, okay, well, now what? And so I actually said no to my contract offer from Harlequins and went up to Durham University, who very kindly sort of said, look, we'll take you. And I thought, right, I need to sort of right these wrongs and make sure I get a decent degree and all the rest of it from a good university, count my lucky stars. And so I kind of said no in my first year at Durham. And then luckily, unfortunately for me, Durham were quite good at rugby. I was playing for their first team, and Newcastle Falcons came knocking, and and it went from there, really. I'll be honest, it was a bit of luck more than judgment. Their head of it's quite an amusing story. Their head of the under-21s Newcastle team had come down to watch a Durham game, and he'd seen a few of them, and he came over at the end of it. His name was the Moth, or his nickname was the Moth. I can't actually remember his full name. I can't remember it now. Anyway, the Moth came over, and he said, "Oh, Ollie," he was a Kiwi bloke. He said, "Oh, you're playing well, and we've seen you, seen you doing really good, scoring a few and whatever. We'd love to get you up to training sometime, the 21s." And I took that as, "Oh, he wants me to come to training." So I,
why not?
I'd heard 1 + 1 and made 6 out of it. So I told some of the lads who were at Durham, who I was playing with, "Oh, look, in Moths asked me to come up to training next." They used to train at some ridiculous time in the morning, like 6 a.m. on a Thursday morning or something like that. And I was like, "Oh, Moss told me to come up. I'll come up with you in the morning." So we drove up. We'd leave early just to be in case we get traffic or whatever else. So I'd got there and the Moth wasn't there and the boys were there. So I sort of started, introduced myself, wandered around, playing touch, whatever. Moth turned up at 6 o'clock. He was like, "Ollie, what are you doing? What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh, mate, you said I thought you said to come to train." He was like, "No." No, I said, "I might have to get you along sometime, but you're not, I was like, "Oh, this is awkward." And well, you're here anyway. You might as well train in the morning, like with us for now. But look, we'll invite you for the next one. And in that training session, the lad that was starting on the weekend against Leicester got injured on the wing, and they didn't have any wingers left. So they said, "Look, I was a centre normally." They said, "Would you play wing?" I was like, "Oh yeah, love to. Yeah, thanks very much, love to." Played, scored a hat trick. So he couldn't drop me for the next week, and they only had 2 games left after that, so he couldn't drop me. And then I said, "Oh yeah." So anyway, I played the next game, scored another hat trick, and I'd never done this before. And then the final game was at Kingston Park against London Irish, and I played in that game and scored another hat trick. And Rob Andrew was the head coach for the first team at that point, and he was watching, and he was like, Who's that lad that's just scored a hat trick or whatever?" And they were like, "Oh, Ollie Phillips. He's just been playing with us last couple of games for Durham." And he just said, "Oh, well, we want to invite you to pre-season with the first team," and that was it.
That's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. So I mean, the message there is just be bold as brass, invite yourself along to training, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I love that. That is absolutely brilliant. I guess you do have to follow up with a hat trick of hat tricks, but it's about right.
I'd never done that. I never did that after that either. But I just went through. Don't know. Honestly, I have no explanation for it, whatever. But I just had 3 bumper games, and that was it.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Well, like you say, you just got to jump in sometimes, haven't you? Misunderstandings as well.
All that does, and invite yourself along.
Yeah. And so look, that was the start of what clearly was a good career, not just in the 15s game though.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was lucky. I mean, so from that, I went to pre-season with Newcastle. I remember that was in the May, and I started in the July in pre-season, and I got picked for England in the December. So it was quick, real fast, and I went to July. And all these guys that I've been watching on the telly and with my uni mates and whatever, sort of my idols of the game, like Henry Paul, Pat Sanderson, who else? They were Ugo Monye, Ben Golling, Simon Amor, all these sort of iconic 7s and England players, 15s players were playing, and then me, Ugo Monye, and a guy called Matt Tate all got picked. Go to Dubai, and England had never won in Dubai, and we won. So it was like sort of like amazing start to my 7s career. So I was fortunate. It just came thick and fast at that point, and I sort of rode the wave for about a year and a half.
And what do you think then? Because like you say, as I was looking and watching, and I do quite like the like you say, the 7s format. And for you certainly burst on the scene at that time. England, like you said, hadn't. Well, they were successful. They'd had success, success.
We've not been great. We just sort of started to take it seriously probably the year before. So it was all about timing. And I had come into the program just as the RFU in England had got serious about it.
Yeah.
And I was involved. So it was an absolutely cracking time. My time with the England squad, well, really from 2002 until 2000, I finished in 13. It was well, they were the best years of England's time ever, really, and we never won as many tournaments.
Yeah, that's right. And look, I got to capture some of the, I guess, near wins in Hong Kong. I was out there from 2006 through to 17.
We won 3 back-to-back, 02, 03, 04. So you missed it.
Yeah, I did. So by the time I came out, and I was all brash in the crowd, thinking, "Well, it's England, we're going to win it again." You do it for me. You did.
You're probably cursing me. Going, Ollie Phillips, he's bloody useless. Get him off. What's he doing?
No, there was still good stuff. It was still good stuff. But yeah, but look, for you as an individual, 09 as well, especially. Well, I look at that one as player of the year. I mean, what do you think brought that on?
I know. Sort of, it is all about timing. If I'm honest, like it was that year, just everything fell into place for us as an England squad, and me as a captain. I've been asked to be captain of the squad. We had a pretty established, experienced group of players that were super talented, that complemented each other really, really well. No one expected anything of us. I think that was the other thing as well. The year before, we were useless. We'd finished like 7th, 8th in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So for us to come from that to then be sort of number 1 side in the world was quite unique.
Yeah,
I was, captain at the helm of that. I'd had a couple of very good tournaments right when it, probably mattered in terms of that vote. Wellington in particular, Wellington, San Diego, Dubai. So I was just timed it. I mean, it wasn't deliberate, but just, the timing of it was very fortunate for me and for us as an England squad. And, to this date, it still is the most sort of successful like England campaign that's ever sort of happened. We hit 5 finals, 1-3, or 5 finals, 1-3. Yeah. So a ranked number 1 side in the world. It was a very good year for us as an England side.
And so when you think about that year then in particular, were things building towards that period? Was it intentional that 2009 was going to be when it really happened?
No, not. As I say, like the year before, we were 8th in the world, and we came into the start of that campaign, well, with no one expecting anything of us. We were going to be. Our personnel hadn't really changed that much. A couple of different people that were involved. Myself was one of them. I mean, I'd come back into the frame, having had like a year where I'd been injured. But yeah, I think we changed quite a few things in our squad in terms of our mental approach to things and how we measured ourselves, how we applied ourselves. And I think that really changed the dynamic as a team. And we got very focused on how we could support each other and how we could really champion each other's strengths. And I mean, on a personal level, I remember reading a book called Decide to Win, and it really changed my perspective on stuff. And I remember talking to the squad about it around, why do we have to be, realistic about stuff? Why don't we just go and win every game? We should win every game. Why do we expect to win every game? Why is that not a belief set that we have? Why do we need to, moderate that or limit that? And it really changed my perspective. And I don't know if I did or I didn't, but I noticed that we as a team changed a lot in terms of how we delivered, and that book was sort of fairly pivotal in some of my thinking.
Yeah. And so then that book influenced you. It sounds like you then influenced on the team. Was there any broader structure then that brought in much more of a performance mindset approach?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, we talked about a few bits and pieces when we were playing. So we talked about building contagious behaviors. So how do we keep reinforcing positives over and over and over again all the time? So if someone does something good, back it up, really champion it. So that was a major play, and it was bolstered a lot by Ben Ryan and Russell Earnshaw, our 2 coaches at the time. I think it was probably a bit begrudgingly, but me as a captain, I just feel like demanded a bit more of fun. I remember in Dubai, I through network or whatever, somebody we met, they took us out on this big sort of power boat for it on our day off, and we're all jumping off into the sea and all that sort of stuff. And probably from an injury risk perspective, they'd have been having kittens if they'd have known what we're going to do. But in terms of like the camaraderie and the way it brought the group together, it was sensational. And if you like, that continued, like that had to get. I mean, I set myself up for a fall, but at that point, we had to do more. So when we went to New Zealand, we got the Harley Davidson owners group to come and meet us. All these hogs came with all the skull and crossbones, and they took us all on the back of their Harleys all around Wellington. Again, probably a health and safety nightmare for our football, but we just didn't tell them. Did it, and if you like, the energy that people came back with, and the sort of like just mental reset was critical. And then that created such an awesome dynamic amongst the group and within the team that we would do anything for each other at that point. We'd have gone anywhere, done anything, and that pays dividends when you're on the field and you need somebody to do something they don't really want to do.
Brilliant. And like you say, that really then gels the team. You fight for one another. You make it. I love the phrase that contagious behaviours. And supporting one another as you work through that. It's just really powerful, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was there was a lot of things, if you like. It was a big mindset shift for me on a personal level that year, and I think for everybody. But it was this realization of the power of self-talk, and then the power that once you do that of collaborating together, of just really focusing on strengths, just encouraging people all the time, focusing on strengths, supporting one another, not being, not sweating the small stuff, not getting anxious about worrying about what might go wrong, being like, if you like, enthralled and excited about trying different things, about if you like, about well, to be honest, the whole philosophy was about loving winning, whereas lots of teams that I've been involved in, it probably never said, but there was lots of fear of losing, and that's a very different approach. The outcome's identical. If you fear losing and it never happens, well, then you still win. If you love winning, if you just the psychological, mental, emotional approach to it, and equally the outcome of it, it's a very different experience. And it's like a liberation. Whereas if you're fearing something all the time, it's just like a relief that it hasn't happened, that you've kind of dodged a bullet, one more bullet again. And it's just constant anxious roller coaster rather than just, so that let's just shoot for the stars and hopefully we end up on the moon.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And I guess you got a chance to love a lot during that season as well. Some of those magical seasons like you said, winning.
Yeah, I mean, I think people say this all the time, right? And I'll be honest, at the exact moment, I probably was too overly interested in winning and that thing, but I still, even now, I look back on it with just such incredible memories because of the journey that everyone talks about, but the experience of how do we change the dynamic? How do we challenge ourselves and just get better every day and celebrate that fact that we're getting better every day, and not really worry about the outcome too much, because if we fulfill our potential and we play to our own true levels of capability and excitement and whatever, the result we'll win more often than we lose. So let's not focus too much on the W. Let's just focus on loving every minute of this opportunity, because it's not very often that you're going to get to play for England and go around the world and play in a World Cup. So I think that was an amazing experience, and it's been the first time really that I just, if you like, enjoyed the ride rather than worried about the outcome.
And so look, just I guess shifting a little bit, the ride, that journey that you were on, great success, coming through that. Was there a point At what point did you start to realise that this isn't going to be something that's going to last forever? When did you start to realise that there might have to be a life after rugby?
Question. I mean, I'll be honest, I think you always know it. I mean, even from day one, you always know it and people talk to you about it. But whether you truly accept it is a very different thing, right? I think you know that it's there and it will come, but it's always like, well, it'll be next year, I'll be the year after, or it won't be me, or someone will talk to you about injuries or whatever, but it'll never. And for me, I got injured early. I retired earlier than I sort of thought I would, and yeah, that was a disappointment for me. I thought I was going to go to the Olympics, and in Rio that didn't happen. I missed out because I got injured at a World Cup, and yeah, I think I wasn't mentally and emotionally or whatever prepared for that. Right? I didn't think that was ever going to happen to me, but it did, and it was amazing, to be honest.
It was what? Sorry, amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was an amazing experience to go through, even though it was traumatic. In the fact that, I'll be honest, it helped me grow into the person that, I know it sounds a bit stupid, right? But it helped me grow into the person that I am today, which is somebody that is a lot more comfortable and confident in their own skin, and a lot more certain and sure about what he wants in life. Whereas when I finished playing, I was definitely somebody that, in a sort of mental, psychological state, was very much still in need of recognition, support. But I wasn't ready to, it sounds a bit ironic, but I wasn't ready to stand on my own 2 feet because I'd been so institutionalized by sport. Every week I had gone from being in a position where I was, given feedback, you're good or bad, told what you've got to get better at, and every single weekend you had the opportunity to do it all again. And so I kind of, even though I honestly, I hated it for the first, 2 years after playing, and was very reluctant to accept it. And it was all part of my personal identity. And I would introduce myself as, oh, hi, Ollie. I used to play rugby, not like, this is what I do now. I still used to refer to that all the time. That, a bit like I said, I love the journey of where we were in 2009. Maybe the word amazing or loved was maybe, but I'm grateful for that experience post my playing career, because it was a really hard one, and involved bouts of depression and whatever else, but it really helped me, whatever you call it, mature at the end of it all. I mean, if you ask my wife, she'd probably say I'm a liar, but yeah, I definitely feel like it gave me clarity around like who I am and who I would like to be, and ultimately the behaviors and things I need to do in order to become that person. And I wouldn't have, if rugby hadn't have ended, I don't know if I'd have ever grown up, because I'd have always been in the limelight, always sought after, always probably too busy chasing my own ego.
Yeah, and so as you went through that process, so now you can look back at that 2 years and you recognise emotions that you'd have gone through, depression, as you just described there. As you were going through that, were you aware of what was happening? Were you aware of feeling depressed, or what you were yearning for?
Yeah. I didn't know what I was yearning for, but I definitely knew there was something wrong. Mainly on outcomes, right? I was watching things happen in my life that I was like, I'm hurting people here, or like I've got this image of like who I am or who I'd like to be, and actually the outcomes and my behaviors are not really consistent to that person, that theoretical human being. And I'd probably been ignorant to that for like 5 years of my life, maybe longer, where I was like, oh, it's not me, it's them, or it's something else, or maybe it's just not the right time. I don't know, whatever the excuse was that I gave at that point in time, rather than being my fault, it was always somebody else's fault. And
Yeah.
I just think that I need to go to that level of acceptance, and then a realization of like, okay, what's this rooted in now? How do we make it better?
Yeah. So then at the time, because like you say, the journey that you described and where you are today, what were can you recall the steps you took to come out of that funk, to be able to turn around and say, this is who I am, this is why I feel more comfortable?
Well, I mean, a lot of therapy, so for one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do. I mean, well, I remember getting worse before getting better, if that makes sense. I remember sort of really having to mentally and emotionally, it was quite draining, quite fatiguing, and didn't really feel like there was any, at the beginning, didn't really feel like there was a end in sight. And it doesn't like end. It isn't like, oh, great, brilliant, just walk away one day and you're fine. It's just a certain level of clarity and security that you get in certain things, and certitude on certain stuff. You're like, you know what, actually, I kind of know what is important to me now, and I equally know how I can live my life so that I'm true to that, and equally I understand what behaviors I exhibit when I try to sabotage that. And you can self-sabotage all the time, and there's the sabotage route is often the sort of easy, quick fix, but quite attractive one, and in the moment, right? If you liken it to the easiest stuff is like around weight loss, it's like, oh, I've got this absolutely epic goal of whatever it might be, and I just want to live a really healthy and fulfilled life. But God, at that, it's trivial, but that chocolate bar looks attractive, and I'll just go and absolutely smash that whole kilo bar. And at the end of it, I like the process. It makes me feel amazing, but then the end, I feel like a gluttonous pig, and then I hate myself for a week because I've ruined all the hard work that I've put in for the last 4 weeks. So I'm just sort of, and it's the same on everything. I had it, for me, it was in relationships and stuff like that. So you've got this image of being a good, honest, trustworthy person in a loving, caring relationship, and then you'll sabotage it because you'll go and flirt with somebody else or do something, or try and manipulate a relationship to suit your favor, or whatever it might be, that it's just not really living up to what is important to you and true to you. And then the ramifications of that and repercussions of that are damaging for everyone and quite long lasting and everything else like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And so, coming through that journey, where the things that you have done since rugby, for me, are also quite remarkable. And again, the stuff of dreams. So when you think now, what you're doing today, how do you do that? I mean, from consulting, from entrepreneurial activities and charitable activities, how did you start to structure that after your career as you started to come through? Or indeed, was it after or was it during?
No, it was all after, yeah. And it all came from sailing around the world, actually, which was the sort of, if you like, right as soon as my career ended, it was kind of flight of fancy, and maybe it was a desperate attempt to still remain a somebody. So if you like, that decision was probably driven, I always say desperation shouldn't drive innovation, but it definitely was a desperate move. But the irony actually that came out at the end of it was just a wealth of opportunity that has been amazing for me over the last 10 years. And yeah, I kind of reflect now, if you like, on my 20s, that was all sport. And in my 30s, that's kind of been my new career.
Yeah.
And it's been filled with a lot of color and a lot of difference, I think. And at times, if I were to be critical of myself, I probably haven't enjoyed and rewarded myself or congratulated myself probably enough for the things that we've done and the journey that I've kind of been through.
Yeah.
But but it was some amazing. I mean, like, yeah, in that time I've sailed around. We sailed around the world, been up Everest, North Pole, set 4 world records, cycled across America. Been at PwC for 7 years, built my own business, coached, been head coach for Wales, about to become head coach for China. So, you know, all sorts of crazy things, right? Crazy adventures. And I would, if I were to reflect on difference in my approach, would have been when I was playing in those 20s, I was just so single-minded and focused on winning an outcome.
Yeah.
And didn't necessarily always appreciate and recognize and relish and enjoy the process and the journey of getting there. And I would say now it's very much the other way around. Yes, there's been outcomes that are great, you know, world records or sailing around the world. But I would say I wasn't really focused on those things. I'm not really bothered about those things per se. It's been more the people that we've done it with, the experience of being up there and doing all these crazy, stupid things that have meant that, you know, we've got amazing stories to tell. So that when I'm in my 40s, 50s, 60s, I see these people, I'll be like, do you remember that time that we did blah, blah, blah? And they'll be like, yeah. You know, and it's whether it's in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years time, you'll always be able to share that nod and a wink with someone.
Yeah. Listen, I think, you know, you talk about the rugby time and that focus on winning, the focus on love of winning and that outcome. You know, just listening to you there, I do find a similarity whereby the mindset shift that you, I guess, instigated or drove in England rugby, in the sevens rugby, where it was about loving of winning, that led to an outcome of being the best team. That led to an outcome of you, you know, taking away the award as you know, top player for the year, even though that wasn't necessarily the intention. Just listening to you enjoying the journeys of mountains, of sailing, of cycling, it still sounds quite similar, whereby it's a shorter term, or at least it's a bit of a focus, and the outcome the outcome happens.
Yeah, I think even when you talk about it, I think about some of the moments of behaviors, and I think there's a real, you know, I don't know, danger or tendency to, if you like, fall back into the old ways of focusing on the outcome. Like, oh my God, if we don't do this, we won't sign the 50 grand contract, or we won't get the world record, or whatever else. And it's sort of like, well, if we lose sight of like why we're doing it, and if we get rid of all the enjoyment of actually how we're going to do it and the process of getting there and whatever, if we forget all of that, we won't even get there in the first place, because you'll lose everyone along the way, or no one will want to come with you, or you'll get bored of it, you'll fall off the mill or whatever else. So I think it's, even in those times, it's still like, okay, just having checks and balances, if you like, all the way through to make sure that you are, to what I said earlier, it's still being true to who you want to be, right? Which is somebody that really embraces and enjoys the process, rather than revels and law and you know, and lauds himself basks himself in the glory at the end of it all, because it's a pretty hollow, pointless existence. I mean, medals, cups, plates, they just collect dust. You know, they don't mean anything. They don't do anything. I mean, I won World Player of the Year in 2009. Somebody else won it in 2010, and there's been another 12 that have won it since then. You know, so I mean, yeah, that's still small numbers, but there's still been 13 or whatever, 13 other people since me, and there was a few of them before me. So, you know, it's about, you can look at it and go, at one point in time, I was the best in the world for my position. That's true, but it was probably like, that's the symbol of all of the process that you went through, and the journey that you went through with this select group of people that enabled that to become a reality. And that's sort of what I try and reflect on now, with lots of stuff. And of the hardest part is, if you like, the easy bit is to obviously focus on the outcome, because you kind of know that's the easy bit to define. Lots of people don't really understand how to get from A to B.
Yeah.
They know they'd like to be at B.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, well, how can I enjoy this process when I'm confused in it the whole time, right? But that's the if you can crack that nut, then that's the real the real fulfillment for me anyway.
Yeah. And so looking at you talk about that fulfillment for you. I'm interested to understand a bit about what you are doing now. So from where you were as that 4-year-old who was kicked out the house, hoping someone's going to bash you on the nose to calm you down, to, like you say, today, entrepreneur, or running a successful business, PwC. What are the kind of things that you are working on today?
Well, number one is being a good dad. I mean, that's the journey the whole way through. So we got 3 kids, and then probably simultaneously, I can't really place them in order, but being a good husband, and I'm sure I'm not always either of those, but we've got 3 young kids, 4, 2, and 8, 9 months old. So that's obviously not without challenge, but trying to enjoy that process and journey on a very personal level, because that's really all that matters at the end of it all. And I wouldn't say I've always got the balance of that right. And then if you like, matching that with your own professional ambition, right?
Yeah.
Which is then in the career space. So yeah, I'm a director of PwC. I have my own leadership business, an experiential learning business that we try and create scenarios and situations to help people touch and feel what good leadership looks like. Or so that's fun. It's called Optimist Performance. And then I'm constantly, if you like, constantly looking for like how can we share in new journeys all the time. Life is pretty short, so how do you create a really rich tapestry that you can experience as much of it as possible? So at the moment, my wife is as keen about the idea as I am, but we're I've been offered the opportunity to become head of performance for China Rugby, so we're probably going to take that on as a challenge and see if we can help transform the largest country and the most populated country in the world into a rugby performance powerhouse. So let's see how we go with that. And that's a challenge. So they're talking about outcome, like that's the kind of outcome. Can they go and win a tournament or a World Cup or whatever? But trying not to focus on that and be like, okay, well, how do we actually establish like the core foundations of what that's going to be, and enjoy the successes and the failings of that, and hopefully everyone buys into it on the way, and see how we go. And the worst thing that can happen is we get it wrong, and then we learn when we get it wrong. We try and do it different the other time. That's called experience, right? So
yes, it is. That's a fantastic opportunity. And having done a bit of rugby in certainly in Hong Kong rather than the Republic or the mainland China, it's a sport that is just kicking off. I would say it's probably had a few false starts, to be honest, but it's a great opportunity for you there to,
I hope so,
to give that a shot. Yeah,
I'm excited, but and then equally, I'm still remaining within PwC at the same time, so that helping them build a sports practice and business in China that can help sort of complement some of that stuff. And hopefully from my Optimist business around leadership culture, I'll learn a lot, and we can equally help
definitely
other people around, like integrating into different cultures and cracking the Asian market. So we'll see how we go.
That'll be interesting. I do like the name of your business, by the way, because when I do my Gallup strengths, doesn't matter how many times I seem to do it, optimism is always up in my top 3. So
there you go. That's a good sign. Yeah. Well, so my if you like, our program or foundation is the eternal optimist. That's the sort of, whatever we call it, slogan pillar that we build everything on. So the eternal, and we try and create our sea of optimists. So obviously, Ryan, you would be in that ocean.
Yeah. Yes, that's it. Swimming, backstroke, chilling out.
Exactly. Good man.
Yeah, that's great. So look, you've had, to date, I would describe as an interesting and at times certainly inspiring journey to get you now. When you look back and you think about those who are stepping into a career of elite professional sport, what tips of advice would you give?
I mean, I'll be honest, not wanting to sort of regurgitate the same message, but I mean, actually, let me sort of clarify that. In order to become a sort of elite professional sportsman, you've got to accept, I think, a little bit that there is a level of selfishness, if I'm being honest, and sacrifice that you kind of need to make. And I think when you're in your 20s, you're probably immature enough to think that that's okay. So that's all right. And I think that's probably what it takes in order to get there. And there are going to be some things along the way that probably you wouldn't necessarily always be that okay with forever, but you're going to have to make those sacrifices to get there. But I would also at the same time reiterate the fact of obviously have a very clear understanding of like what your goal is or what you'd like to achieve. But then at the same time, make sure you really tune in to appreciating and being grateful for the progress and the process that you go through in order to get there, rather than, if you like, constantly focusing on the outcome. Because initially it will be, I want to be a professional rugby player. Or it'll probably be, actually, I want to play for like England schoolboys, something like that. Then you'll do that. And then you'll be like, I want to go be a professional rugby player. And then you'll get into an academy and you'll get signed on some poxy tin pot contract. And you'll be like, yes, I'm in the arena. And then like, right, I want to come start. And then you'll start. And then like, I want to play for England. And then you might get picked for England. You get picked for England. And you're like, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. And if it's always, I want to do this, and there's never any sort of appreciation or recognition or gratitude or enjoyment factor of like the road that you go down and the if you like, the sacrifices that you make along with the people that support you along the way and all the rest of it, if you're totally single-minded about it, you'll probably still get to your outcome, but when it all finishes, you'll be left with a pretty hollow experience and a bit of regret around, like, I wish I'd just spent more time, I don't know, enjoying it. And
yeah,
so that would be it doesn't relate, I mean, it relates to everything really, not just professional sport. I mean, lots of people have got aspirations and goals all over the place, and I think that's really healthy. Yeah. Whether that's losing weight, having kids, whatever, like, it doesn't matter, right? But I think it's about relishing and loving the experience of achieving it and doing it, not here's the outcome. Because if all you're doing is striving towards the outcome, when the outcome comes, you'll be bored already and you'll want something else. Everyone wants a blacker cat or a shinier penny or something like that, right? So if it's always just about the object or the outcome, you'll never really feel that fulfilled, because you'll have missed the real trick along the way. That would probably be my advice.
That's good advice.
There you go.
Listen, it is good advice coming from where you are today and where you've been. It's good to at least hear a good nugget from yourself in terms of how to approach entering into the game and implications of only focusing on I guess that outcome. So I'd say thank you very much for that.
Top man. Pleasure, mate. Pleasure.
Yeah. Well, look, thanks. Definitely thank you. And thanks for staying up or having this conversation quite so late as well in your day.
Thanks for getting up so early as well, your end. There you go.
Yeah, all good. Well, look, thank you. What I'll do is I'll In terms of this podcast series, it will, I think, in about 4 or 5 weeks. But what I'll do is I'll share this. I'm going to share this recording with you anyway, so you can just watch it back and go, what did I say? Nah, don't
it really was amazing. The process that I went through, amazing. Even Ryan was like, amazing.
Amazing. That's it. I'll be quoting that. So it was amazing. So yeah, but listen, thanks very much. It's you know, and just so you do know, hold on, I'll stop recording. Basically, one of the reasons why I there we go.